have a little few modest talents such as that, creating a low tone whistle. It sounds like the wind howling. And I fashioned the imitation of a bird using that technique. It's a flow of the air down here in the throat, right about here. It's hard to describe. You pull your tongue back a little bit and make the note in your throat, between your tongue and your thorax, I suppose. Now, to get on to something more interesting. Well, let's start off with factual information. In feedlots, cattle feedlots, and swine feedlots, pigs, hogs, whatever, feedlots, these animals are confined, basically they're confined to an open-air prison. And, from the animal's point of view, if you want to throw yourself into that mess, and I don't suggest you do, because it isn't pleasant, because it ends up on the kill floor, the slaughterhouse. And, human beings are omnivores, and that means we eat both meat and plants. And in the past, by the past I mean the distant motherfucking past, human beings ate meat primarily, and the animals they killed were big. They were entitled by the biologist megafauna, like the saber-toothed tiger, the mammoth, and so on. But that was, between like, I don't know, 100,000 years ago and, shall we say 25,000 years ago. I mean, these are just rough estimates, of course. And the anthropologists and the paleontologists and the archaeologists and the confabbing politicians and there are not so newsworthy journalists, not competitors, but well, in some cases, yes. Well, let us focus in on Fox News, for example. Fox News. And there are well, let us say that Fox News at the outset is a problematic institution. And that goes without saying, because a man named Riley has been fired for sexual harassment, has he not? And who else has been fired from this established corporation run by none other than Rupert Murdoch from Australia, no less. Rupert Murdoch, the mogul of media kingpin and so on, who has 2 or 3 sons at his disposal who conduct his affairs as well. Now, we can get down to the primary problems of Fox News, which my thesis, as well as many others, is that Fox News, precisely speaking, is a font of propaganda. A font of propaganda, which means a font of lies and misstatements and misinformation. Misinformation. And in regard to Biden's idea of curtailing meat consumption, this was just utterly I don't know, absurd propaganda attempts at propaganda which failed miserably because it was so obvious in their intent in the first place. Their intent was to infuse people with confusion, infuse them with misinformation, infuse them with contempt for what Biden is doing, which is trying to help people rather than harm them. And all that the repubs can do is to harm people by lying and stealing their pocket money in the form of consumption. And the biggest services, the biggest corporations now are not even services and corporations that produce objects. They only produce the binary code which streams upon into your computer and enables you to do whatever you like in this virtual, hypothetical, post-industrialized virtual world, which many people seem to subsist in and live in all their 24-hour day period. And well, as Martin Heidegger put it, we have become bewitched by technology. Bewitched. And that is a pure fact. It is so self-evident. You just look at it. We are bewitched by technology. You try to extract yourself from it, good luck. You'll have, how shall I put it? Withdrawal symptoms in no time. Withdrawal symptoms. Like, well, I'll give you a good example. When I separated from my first wife several times, and one time I even left the town. I lived in Pocatello, Idaho, and moved to Bellingham, Washington, where I'd lived once when I was single back in 1975 and 1976. And back when Jimmy Carter got elected as president. Anyway. I stayed in Bellingham, and I'd taken the bus there to make sure that I could get there in the first place, because I tried to leave earlier in a car, and the car had a malfunction. Like a clutch cable burst apart, and that was the end of it. Couldn't get out of first gear. Anyway, so my what I call the sojourn, which is a long stay in some other place than your hometown. I wrote about it, and I thought a lot about it, and I had two jobs there. I worked in I would call it a horticultural factory where they manufactured flowers to sell at grocery stores. It was a big place, and they dragged around what they called flats, which contained many different kinds of flowers, or the same kind, depended on what was needed. And they drug these around with these, they were like small tractors. And the men and the women who operated these tractors and trailers, which contained all these flippin' flats, were usually Hispanic people. And whether they were legal immigrants or illegal immigrants, I don't know, but they worked there. And of course, they spoke Spanish. That's their country's language, and not all of them were from Mexico, of course. Some of them were from Central America. Some might have been from South America. Who knows? But anyway, they were there, and I got to know this one guy, and and they flip back and forth in their talk to each other, and one called the other cabron, cabron, cabron this, and cabron that, and whatever. And finally I asked, oh, I forget his name. Anyway, he sold me a bicycle for a good price. It was a little too big, but I took care of that. I just lowered the seat down to the very bottom, put on some fenders so the rainwater wouldn't slosh up over my legs and into my crotch when I went to my other job, which was at a gas station. And then, after about 5 months, I went back to Pocatello. That was a sojourn in Bellingham. And my son, old 20 years old, 19, he asked me what I did when I was there, and I said, well, I didn't do much besides work and read books. And, well, what else did you do, he asked. And I said, well, I went to movies now and then. I went to a theater, saw movies. Oh, what did you see? I said, well, I saw that movie with Will something or other and Tommy Lee Jones, Men in Black. These two guys are, assassinating aliens and so on. Yeah, it's a crazy movie. But, well, back to Tucker Carlson and what's his name, Sean Hannity. They're both propagandists, and the countrified and city-hating country folk love to watch Fox News because what they say is everything they want to hear. Fox News panders to their taste, panders to their politics, and panders to everything about them so that their advertisers are happy. And they're paid in full and so on. And as one recent freshman congresswoman put it, it's all about the Benjamins, baby, and believe you me, it is. It's all about the Franklin and the Jackson and the Benjamins, now ain't it? It's all about money. It's all about money, and it always has been about money in this misbegotten country of ours. This misbegotten country who treats nearly one-third now of the populace with disrespect and disloyalty to the Constitution. And some of those one-third have a murderous lust against people who don't look like they do, which means people who are out white, skinned. Well, what if some of you assholes lay out in the sun for about 5 hours a day, 10 days, at a stretch, you get your nice tan on, well, then you're not so white now, are you? What the hell is all this skin pigmentation? You go down like a surgeon, you go down underneath the skin, subcutaneous examination and so on, and we are all the same. We're all the same, you fucking fools. God. There's only one species of humankind, and that is, the biologists say Homo sapien. A knowing being. Go on. Film. Go on. A knowing man, Homo sapien. That's what that means. dare one set of people with a lighter skin pigmentation say that a group of people with a slightly darker skin pigmentation are different. They are not. They're only compelled and forced to be different because of social mores at the time. And the social mores at that time, and many have been and always will be, perhaps, unjust. Because, as they say, people are people everywhere. And they all have their foibles, and they all have their misbegotten perceptions, and they all have their mistaken notions, and they all have their vile, contemptuous ideas about others, apart from themselves, whom they elevate up with religion and so on. They make themselves feel, oh, so effervescent and buoyed up by the gases of the bubbling religion that they live upon. They live upon it, or the mere echo of it. But they don't give a shit. And they just lay claim to it when it suits them. American culture is very, very curious. And it will always be so. Because it is an ongoing experiment in cultural and political history.